right, you hear me through the microphone? Yeah. Okay, I think we will start. I don't know if the other session is already finished, but I will already start to tell you something about building a practical DevSecOps culture in your organization. Because I think we have been talking a lot about AI and cool stuff, and people are doing a lot of things for themselves or at their company. But I think it's really important to also zoom in on that side, how to ensure everything stays safe and secure in a way that you also can comply with regulations, your own policies, what your clients expect, and so on and so on. So, there we go. So who am I? I'm Matthias. I have been around in technical stuff since 18 years. So started as Drupal developer. Started building my own CMS. Failed horribly. Found Drupal, started there, and yeah, here we are. So I've moved from Drupal development to product development to product architecture, and I'm now in the role of the head of engineering at Drupal, where I do the day-to-day focus on ensuring that we build a product that's scalable, functional, that we can pay it, as in the resource it needs, and so on and so on. That it stays secure, and so on. And that part is also combined with, I'm part of the compliance team of Drupal. I will zoom in on that, why we have a compliance team. But basically, we have a compliance team that builds an ESMS. I will zoom in on that also. And that's ISO certified, which I also will zoom in on. So if you don't know what all of that is, you will know it in a bit. But basically, I'm not only focusing on the technical side, but also ensuring that we are compliant with anything that's regulation and so on and so on. So where do I work for? For Drupal, company from Belgium, mainly focusing on the European market, but also some touch points in America. Like I said, we are building a product. So we started as a purely services company, but evolved towards having our own product, being the Drupal experience platform. It's the one in the middle. I can use the, yes, there we go, that part. But we focus basically on all the expertise domains that you can see here. So from strategy to integrations to then the platform itself and to compliance. So not going to zoom in on the company, but that's basically what we do, and where I take a role then in the product part and in the compliance part. So what do I want to talk to you about today? About DevOps and DevSecOps. First, let's ensure that we're all talking about the same thing. Then I want to explain why that part is important in the sense for compliance and regulations, and why you need to have that awareness there. You're not doing it for the sake of a clean pipeline, so to say, or the sake of having something to do. You do it for a reason, for yourself, for your company, for your clients, and so on and so on. And also, how can you get started practically? How do you ensure that you can, if you're, after what I told, yay, let's go, how can you start? And then, how can you do it pragmatically? Because there is you can easily burn yourself in having an implementation that never will end. But let's start with the first thing, the DevOps, DevSecOps. So, first thing, let's understand what is needed for having a DevSecOps culture in your company, because DevOps is not a role of a function. I will repeat it, I repeat it again, I will go back and forth again. It is the case. It is not you don't hire a DevOps. You ensure that you have a DevOps culture in your company. And that's really important, because what is DevOps basically about? It's a mindset. It's a mindset of how you approach development, software development, basically. In our case, because what's the key thing here is a shared responsibility. If you look at it purely from a software development, you have somebody focusing on front end and on back end. If you just look at that, but if only the front end succeeds, we don't have anything at the end. It's a shared responsibility, and the same goes for DevOps. It's not because a specific person focuses on IT and infrastructure, so to say, that it's his responsibility alone to be successful. No, it's a team effort. It's a mindset that you need to have. Because you want to focus on the collaboration of the automation and the continuous improvements of what you're doing. If you don't learn something every day, week, month, what are you doing? So that continuous improvement is actually needed, and a DevOps kind of way of working helps with that. Because what are the key things? That's my interpretation, so to say, or how I look at it, is these three things: collaboration, automation, and continuous delivery. So basically ensure that you work together. It's a very simple thing to say if the word is DevOps, that you combine development and operations, simply said, but it's actually the case. Don't look in the silos like in the old, so to say, old tech companies. Look at it from how can we build something that we can work together. Key is also automate stuff. There is no way you can do it all manually. And in the era of AI that we are in right now, you can do cool stuff there also. But streamline it. Ensure that you have your build, test, release, deploy pipeline automated. And then ensure that you can release, that pipeline can run almost with your eyes closed. It just runs and it's automatic, and you have deploy Fridays, so to say. That you can have that. I'm saying the end goal, and not saying that everybody should be able to do that today. That's not the case. But that's basically what the essentials are for DevOps. Because if you then add DevSecOps, we're in the middle, what happens is then the shift left principle. What does that mean? You ensure that security moves earlier in the stage, and not like, we do security first instead of at the end. No, you do security along the line, but you start early in the process. You can easily combine it, compare it to a concept, Git hooks. It's the closest thing before even a commit can happen, where you can hook into a system. Think of it like that. How can you incorporate security on a level where we start at the beginning, instead of a CI pipeline at the end, or even a person that just raised a question, hey, we got hacked. Because then you're too late. So how can you move it to the left? Let me look at it from I'm showing it the opposite direction, of course, but you get the point. What is it also? Ensure that the testing and scanning is done during the process. And if you combine it with the first one, how can you start testing in the beginning instead of the end? And same thing here. It's a way of working. It's a culture. And the easiest way of looking at it is from a hierarchy model. The infrastructure person is accountable for the security, but it's not his sole responsibility to have the whole thing working. So it's a very simple thing. If you look at it like that, you have to work together. You can have dedicated teams for it, perfectly normal, but you need to have the culture to look at it that way. You can have the silos, so to say, we have the lines in between. That's what you want to have. If you don't have the silos, even better, but yeah, you get the point. All right, so that's what DevSecOps is about. But why are you building that? You can say, okay, we're building that for having that efficient pipeline, ensuring that we can deliver fast, and so on and so on. But more or less, you're, so to say, forced into it, and it's something that's got more and more traction over the last years. What I want to talk about now is some more drier stuff, but it's really important to understand the end goal you want to achieve in the end, to ensure that you can check the boxes, because if you're doing something just for the purpose of having a cool CI pipeline, that can be cool, but probably not what your boss is paying you for, to have only that part. So you most likely want also to check some of those boxes. So why is this important? Because a lot is happening. You have NIS2, DORA, AI Act, GDPR. I can continue depending on the geographical location you're in. It's a never-ending story. I want to go over them, and from here on, I said it also in the summary of the presentation, it's buzzword bingo. You will see that it's abbreviation. You will see it. You will see it. And I explain them also and ensure that you can understand what it is about. So let's start with the first one, NIS, Network and Information Systems Directive. 2, that's important. Because since the 17 October and 18 October, NIS 1 doesn't exist anymore. It's NIS 2. What is NIS 2? It's basically a directive. What is a directive? It's like, it's not a law yet, but the EU said you have to do this. And what happened? So they wanted to have a strengthened way, the cybersecurity strengthening across Europe, across companies and so on and so on. So, and basically to ensure that there is a higher common level and resilience against cyber attacks, against threats, and so on and so on. And most of us will be directly or indirectly impacted. Some of us are in one of the industries. For example, if you are you work for an electricity supplier or a water company, you are directly impacted because they are in one of those systems that are critical for Europe, water distribution, electricity. But also indirectly, because they have to fill in checklists to say, hey, our vendors are compatible. And if you're one of those vendors, you need to have those controls in place anyhow to ensure that you can work with them. So it's very important. And it's the law in Belgium, very simple. And technically, across Europe. I checked it yesterday, and let's say there is some leeway in Europe. Like I think France just a few weeks ago, they finally got through it, and it's actually active now. Other countries already have it, and some it's still like yeah, somewhere in between the text is there, but it's not approved by the government. But yeah, basically it's done, and you need to comply with it. Then we also have DORA, Digital Operation Resilience Act. Is anyone here in a sector that they have to comply actively with DORA or being in such an industry? Oh, okay, because it's really focusing on financial entities and their technical providers. So every like cloud provider that does hosting for financial entities has to comply with DORA, because they're a critical part of it. Hosting a bank application, yeah, that's kind of critical. I'm not going to read that there, but basically what it covers is that resilience against cyber attacks and system failures. That's what they want to have. And they want to have, and then, yeah, a lot of abbreviations here, the regulatory technical standards and implementation technical standards using an ICT risk management framework and so on and so on. So a lot of technical terms. It's like, it's not completed yet, what they want to achieve, but yeah, it's there. But the first part is, it was like a grace period of a year or an implementation period of a year, but since beginning of January, it's active. Banks or financial entities have to comply with it. Then you have the AI Act. Hey, hooray, AI. Yeah, AI stands for artificial intelligence, but that you already knew, so no problem there. But it's basically a legal framework on AI, and it's a first. Like worldwide, it's a first. Some people say, yeah, that America is innovating and Europe is regulating. This is one of those examples. You can be against it or you can approve it, but yeah. But there are basically four levels. 4 levels of risk. It's a risk-based assessments on how you want to work or allow you to work with AI. The first level is unacceptable. It's kind of clear. You cannot do that. And basically, since 2 February, you cannot have any social scoring system anymore. If you think of China, you all have probably seen pictures of people being scored based on their face when they do something in a city. That is not allowed at all in Europe. You cannot build such a system. The same for emotion recognition in workplaces. You cannot have a system here, technically, to see how happy people are. You cannot. It's not allowed. So, yeah. But that seems fine. But in the high risk, where you need to take action, I took 2 examples out of it, just to give awareness on, we will face, or we will see this in practice, because you cannot use it to sort CVs. You cannot use it to rank people based on something they could be, how to say that, that they are discriminated, basically. You cannot use it, which could technically lead to discrimination. But the same for loans. Banks cannot use AI. Well, they can use AI, but they have to prove that they do it in a correct way. And that's still moving forward. There is still not yet a date when they need to comply with something, but this will come stricter and stricter. America is innovating, Europe is regulating. This is a very good example where we will face it in the future. So yeah. Just take that in the back of your head. But yeah, so I talked about NIS2, DORA, AI Act. How can you now do something with that? How can you now ensure that you and your company have a part there that can comply or adhere to all those standards? The best way to do such a thing is with an ISMS, an Information Security Management System, which is basically a framework to manage and protect information assets. That is everything. That's your people, your data, the data of your client, and data can be very broad. Can be financial data, can be like personnel data, can be everything. Can be everything. And what it is basically a set of policies, procedures, and controls that you define and that you practice. And the second part is important, because what you basically have, you have to prove, and that's the last part about the certification, you have to prove that you have processes in place that follow those policies, procedures, and implement those controls. And it's a very process-driven thing also, because in the end you need to be able to do it. So, and basically, why is that? Why is that? To have that confidential integrity and availability of information safeguards in place. That's it. We are Solid, and so what can you do with that? What can you do with that? Then you can basically, all the things that are in NIS2 or DORA or AI Act, you can implement them because you have a process where you just need to check, okay, where in the process can we fit that part in that corresponds to that control, that procedure, that policy that we need to adhere to. As we at Drupal did that. 2 years ago, we started, well, 3 years ago, we started our setting up an ESMS. It was like, yeah, cool, let's start it. The first thing is that you need to ask then is, do we have a process? Do we have a process in place where you can say, okay, what is needed here to make it more secure, or to, not per se more secure, but to take the necessary measures to protect our data? But that's the first thing, process documentation. And if you think for yourself in your company, are all your processes documented from A to Z, for every department, for everything that you would want to have your ESMS cover? For us, it was challenging, because in the beginning it was, oh yeah, let's go, but suddenly it became clear that some processes are not defined, they are in people's heads. They are like in some part of documentation, but one is in a Google Drive document, the other one is in Confluence. So that effort, for us, the biggest effort there was that the processes became basically the backbone of our documentation. The effort that we did became the backbone of the documentation of the company. So, and that's really important. I'm not going to go into that detail. I can talk another hour purely about this, but I'm not going to do that. But it's really important. If you don't have such a system yet, you should start it, because you will never be able to have something in place that can adhere to this TOO, DORA, or AI Act if you don't have a system that you can prove that the processes are in place. So we did that, we started 3 years ago, and last year we had our ISO certification, which means an auditor came by, went over all the processes, had conversations with people, checked if we actually do what we have written down there, and he agrees with, he agrees with that it complies with what basically the norm, the ISO specification says. And so we got certified next week. Actually, we have our internal audit for our second year, and in a month we have our external audit. So it's a busy period to ensure that we show the continuous improvement there. So yeah, that's all those facts. Let's circle back now to DevSecOps. Why? Because one of the key things, and I forgot to add the word here, but basically it's a very important word here, proof. Prove that you did something. Because you can say you have a process, but prove it. Prove that you have a joiner, mover, leaver process. Somebody starts, gets credentials, and when he leaves, they are removed. It can be a ticket in a system. And the same for security. Prove that you have records of your auditing. Prove that you have done that security check on that code base. And same let's say you have to do that. And you have no automation, that is practically impossible. So automation becomes even more and more important, because you have way more things to check, way more things to have the sanity there, or the knowledge there that it's okay. And definitely for AI, that becomes really important, because you will need to be able to show that you comply with those regulations. For example, for the usage for AI for the CVs, scanning of CVs, yeah. That if you build such an application, that's is something that, how will you comply with it, or show that you comply with the regulation that there is? And talking about AI, I think at this point the awareness around what happens, the correct awareness about what happens with your data when you use tooling like AI, like let's say Claude Code, or let's say any ChatGPT or Google Gemini, there is no such thing as free in this world. They use the data for something. Even for paid subscriptions, it can be that in the fine print there is that they can use the data and the data you put into it. In case of an ESMS, so the thing the regulation thing, that makes it very hard to start using any tool suddenly. You cannot just go to a SaaS tool, start using it, and tada, it's there. No, that's very hard. That's very hard because you violate your own rules that you set up to adhere to the NIS2 or other directives. So that's the legal, contractual, and regulatory considerations. Can we use it? Are we allowed? And for our clients to use it, do we have a data processing agreement with clients to use their data or their project with AI? Stuff like that. Not going to zoom in on it. Something to take into your head. Just don't start blindly using any AI tool that you see because it's cool and it has a nice interface. Think about it. Yes. So yeah, that was somehow the why you should get started on that DevSecOps flow. So what I want to do now is to go over those tools, the parts that I see where you can get started with, and so on. Yes. So some assumptions to start with. I assume you're using version control. I can practically not imagine that there would still be someone not using version control. And I hope for the love of God that you use Git and not like VS, the Microsoft thingy or so on. No, I assume that it's Git. And it can be GitLab, GitHub, your own Git, whatever, doesn't really matter. Also that you use some kind of CI/CD flow. GitLab, CI, GitHub Actions, Jenkins, whatever, some automation thing. And that you have some kind of capabilities of run local containerized workloads. It can be Docker, it can be any other variant that also can run containerized workloads, but that you have such a thing. And that's then, now it becomes different, that you have some procedure or guideline that you want to adhere to or that you want to improve with your DevSecOps workflow. Like I said, you're not doing this solely for a bigger pipeline that you have in GitLab CI, that you have more steps. No, you're not. You're doing it for a reason. And the same thing that you can improve by that your software development lifecycle, your SDLC, which is normally something you have written down or not. You have that. You know that you go from an estimation to wireframes to development to and then iterative process and to delivery. You have that. So that software development lifecycle, you have that, and that DevSecOps thing fits into it. So what do we want to have? We want to have that the first part here, like I said. So this part here, the shift left, you can see it very well on the screenshot. I chose it by for that reason. But you see that there is some part here, the testing on multiple levels. Previously, testing was, does my PHP unit tests run? And my browser tests, do they run? No, I know there are some extras, like dependency scanning, like SAST and DAST and some others that I will zoom into now. So I will name some tools. They just exist. I have no affiliation with them. It's just they exist. It's to give an idea on what's possible, not per se on what's available. And I mainly focus on free and open source tools, because that you can start using without any other constraints. But there are many, many, many alternatives. For example, if you would have like a GitLab subscription, the GitLab Ultimate has a lot of those tools built in, a lot of them. But it depends on what you want to use. So that's, I don't have any affiliation with what I mentioned. So let's start. So first thing you can implement is SAST, or the concept you can implement is SAST, static application security testing. It's basically testing before you execute something. Look at that PHP unit test. It's the same thing. Your code is not running. Some of the PHP unit test types. It's just statically checking if there is an issue. And it can be a lot of things. It can be SQL injection, cross-site scripting, API usage, different things. Depending on the vendor, they can check some stuff. There are two really cool ones. That's Bearer CLI and SemGrep, which just exist. They are part of a bigger ecosystem, which I mean they have a SaaS offering, a paying SaaS offering. Those are the CLI tools, and then you can get the reports and so on. If you want a nice dashboard and the UI and so on, that goes into the SaaS model and you have to pay for it, but you can use them. How does that look like? I hope it's big enough. Yeah, there is big enough. So basically, like you see here, that's for JavaScripting. It checks, okay, there is no CSRF middleware in this application. That's not something you would detect in any other testing tool that you have right now, because there is no concept of you knowing that it should be there. But this system has some business rules in it or some definition in it that you need to have it. So that's one of the examples. Another one is DAST, dynamic application security testing. So you have SAST and then DAST, static, dynamic. Basically, here it's like a browser test. You have a running application where you want to test stuff up. Then, of course, you go into SQL injection and so on and so on, some practical examples. They're one of the good starting points, even though it's not a practical, because they have some desktop application that you need to run or to create a baseline and so on, but then you can go CLI is OWASP ZAP, the Zen attack proxy. It's a really decent application. It's a really decent framework. You can export it to different formats to incorporate in other tools, but that's one of the practical ones to use. And then I think, this is something. These two are like, because if you look at test scenarios, you already have the concept of tests that don't require a database, are purely code tests, and then you have the tests that require a running application, like browser tests and so on. This is something then. These are the first two concepts, and then we go into more detailed stuff that you probably already are doing. First one is SCA and the concept of SBOM, and then let's start there. So software composition analysis. Basically, what are my dependencies? Very simple. What are my not per se what are my dependencies, but what vulnerabilities are in my dependencies or in the dependencies of dependencies. You can go very deep if you want. yeah, think of it as PHP packages, JavaScript libraries. Luckily, we are used to using a very good package manager, being Composer, that has the capabilities of doing it. So here we don't need per se an external tool. You could use Composer Audit. I think that's the first screenshot. Yeah, that's just to Composer Audit, and it will show you, yeah, that's vulnerable, that's not vulnerable. But that's only for Composer. That's only for PHP. Most of our projects consist of more than only PHP. So that's why, for example, the OWASP DevScan with then dependency track, that's the UI, or Trivy are two tools that can go further and can go broader than what you currently have only as, in a Composer. So what is one of the goals here? To also have your software bill of materials. You probably know the BOM, that's basically like your shopping list, if you would compare it, but then for software, what do I depend on? It's also something very important if you want to talk to other vendors, or for example, for the NIS2, it can be what dependencies do we have in the applications that you, as a supplier, give to your clients. For example, electricity company will want to have that list. They want to have what is the software that you use to be able to serve the product to us. That's it's a very realistic question that they already ask or will ask. So that's the Composer one. That's the 1 second, I forgot the name. The dependency track is this one. Yeah. So this like more the graphical way can be useful for other people that not per se like CLIs, but that you see very well like how. 1 second, I'm doing it wrong. There we go. That you can see how good are we doing and what specific versions are we using and how are we. All these tools, like also here, have a CLI and then the SaaS component that you basically can use for having those UIs. And then, so we are moving down the chain at this point. You go to the level of container image scanning, because at this point we're only talking about the code or the application that you touch as a developer. Very cool. But some of your dependencies are not per se what you even think about. It can be your browser, like for example, specifically for container images, there is software in there that could be a threat. There could be the vulnerability in one of your operating system dependencies. And that's what the container image scanning does. It basically can scan your Docker images for known vulnerabilities on the OS level or even in the language. So depending on the tool, it can also basically scan your dependencies, your PHP dependencies, and so on and so on. So it's not only your code. So the same Trivy can be used here. You also can use Gripe in combination with Sift, because when you combine the two, you can have your container image scanning and your SBOM functionality in one ecosystem. That's the same company that built those two tools or supports them. So yeah. So we are on that level, and then we can even go one level. Sorry, that's UI. So basically, if you remember the Composer one, it's basically the same thing. You have some CVEs, some severity, versions, and so on. And then here you see something that's not in your code base, but that's a dependency on your operating system. Very important. And you can see it if you use Docker Hub. Many of the images have that page there with that literally this list. It's there. You should do it also for your own images to be sure. Or basically, if you could say a practical example. There is a new Alpine version out. Let's bump it. Yeah. You need to know why you bump it also for security reasons. So having such tool in place to be sure that you actually are not only updating the OS, but also the dependencies that it has is really important. Okay. And another one here that's a Gripe, which basically does the same thing. Other UI, same data, basically. Other tool also, but the end thing is the same. And then we go even one level deeper to the infrastructure part. And this becomes interesting, because then you definitely see how this is definitely somebody else doing this, most likely, because that's infrastructure, but still it's the same shared responsibility at the end to deliver secure from A to Z. And that's what you can do with the infrastructure as code scanning. It basically checks if there is no misconfiguration in your configuration. For example, accidental security issues. Let's say you depend on a service account or a S3 bucket that has no security rules on it. It's an open bucket. That tool can detect that. That it checks, okay, but you're using a bucket that has no permissions, and one of the rules is saying that you should have it in place. Here the same thing. It's not only your code. It's also the part that goes beyond code. It's the configuration to run your code. For all the tools, I forgot to say it in the beginning, for all the tools that I show you, there is a possibility to have your own rules, to exclude rules, to expand rules, to ensure that you basically can follow the pattern that you want. What is for you important and what isn't. Also 2 tools here, Chekhov and Terrascan, which basically have a thing. I think this is one for the, yeah, indeed. So in this case, there was no storage encryption property set on that bucket. And that's one of the rules that you have at your company or for that project. There should be storage encryption enabled. I think I have another one. Yeah, yeah. This is also another one. So this is basically also on the 3 buckets and so on. So basically all the rules, basically the set of rules that you want to have in place. So yeah, those are one of the key concepts that you can have in place on that level. I've shown a lot of tools. You know for yourself what you already have in place in your company. So how do you select one of the tools? So basically, I have some questions here that you can take into your head on the decision making. But most important is what do you already have? What do you need to do to start working on this? Do you already have, for example, a GitLab Ultimate subscription? Yeah. Hopefully you're already using it because it costs some money. So you're probably already using that DES and the SAS capabilities. But what are you already using today? What do you need to use? And the need is basically what is the requirement that you have in your ESMS or for clients or to work on specific projects. For example, for DORA, it can be that you need to have the monthly report of your SBOM, that you need to provide the software list, of the dependency list. What budget do you want to spend on? Definitely, if you go to the SaaS offerings, yeah, that can cost, depending on the size of the company, of the number of projects or the number of repos, depending on what they want to scan, or Docker images, or sorry, container images. It depends. And how much time do you want to spend? Because you can literally start working for the rest of the year and have a very good pipeline, but I don't think that would be that would be approved. So. And then the last one is from how do you look at using open source software versus an enterprise stack that you may already have. So that's all the questions. Why are those important? Because, sorry, that's, okay, keep that in mind. I forgot I added this slide. How can you now incorporate this in that shift left principle? Where can you start? Because you want to start as early as possible. So think for yourself, what can we do with hit hooks? Because all of those tools are CLI tools, which means you can do whatever you want to trigger a command when something happens in a hit before the commit even. Yeah. You can have business logic there. But what you don't want to do is basically enforce everything on a hit commit, because somebody will do a commit in the front-end application where he has no control over the infrastructure as code part where there would be a vulnerability. Let's say that would be the case. That's not a good idea. But you have some concepts or some rules that you can enforce. The same with your IDE. Some IDEs has very good, because you have already that for tests. PHP Unit is very well integrated, for example, in PHP Storm. The same for other tools. You can run basically anything in there that hooks into the events that happen in your IDE. And also very important, CI templates. Every project most likely has some kind of CI definition. But for example, we at Drupal heavily use GitLab. You there have the concept that you can just import your CI flows, which means you can centrally manage them. And you have a way of control to ensuring that every change that you do happens automatically, that there's no change needed in the process. So that is basically a shift left on the level. That's ensuring that it happens automatically, instead of having an action that somebody needs to update the CI template to ensure that you follow the next rule that you want to adhere to. And that's really important, but that's something you need to define yourself. That's something that you need to think of. How can we do this? How can we ensure that we start implementing that security in our DevOps or development flow earlier on in an earlier stage? So let's know. Now I want to zoom in on this page or this slide. Basically, how can you now do it in practice? Because it's important to ensure that you can actually gain something in a short period of time. Why is that important? Because you want to ensure that basically that you can keep it realistic. Don't fix everything from day one. It doesn't make sense to, if you have a list of 100 errors in the beginning, think of it, fix the top amount, and make a ticket to assess if the other ones need to be fixed or you need to adjust the rule. Because both can be valid. It's not because the tool says it by the default set that you need to fix it. And ensure that you have internal advocacy. Ensure that people in the company, or in the team or company, that you can help them understand why this is important. because it's like, I don't know the expression in English, I will skip it, but you basically need to ensure that you're not alone. Not only you as a person and not only your team, but ensure that your company understands that it's really important. And then the third one is actually very important, is automate it. Ensure that it's automated. It will help you in ensuring that you can roll it out faster, that you can use it for more projects. If the only thing that you need is dropping a CI file in every project, and you have it, yeah, it's easy. And same for AI. Taking into account what I said in the 7 slide or 10 slides ago, take it into use AI to automate some of the stuff. Boilerplates, configuration sets, checklists, or like generating the baseline for your applications for the configuration of one of those tools. You can do that with AI. There is nothing in there that you cannot do. And improve gradually but continuously. Improve your sets of checks that you want to do. For example, implement one of the 4 options or the 5 options that I showed you. Start with one, very small, and improve it. For example, it can be as simple as doing something with Composer Audit. If you don't have it yet there, because Composer is definitely already in your pipeline. I hope you cannot use Drupal anymore without Composer. Yeah, technically you can, but let's not go there. But start using Composer Audit. Check your dependencies. Make some in your CI/CD tool. Make some event that happens when there is an issue. For example, fail your job, fail the pipeline. Could be a valid case. Maybe not. Maybe just give a warning, trigger a Slack message or something. Do something with it. And also ensure that you embrace a positive culture. What I mean with that is show to the rest of the company that you had a win on security level. You celebrate the win of winning a tender. You celebrate the win of going live with a site. Celebrate that you fixed some security issues. Why not? It's the only way of ensuring that people are aware that security is important on that level. So yeah, that was cool. The conclusion, that was the session itself. And I want to zoom in on, I want to conclude with repeating. So DevOps, it's not a role, it's not a function, it's a culture shift that you want to have in your company. There are a lot of compliance and regulation in Europe or in the world that you need to comply to or adhere to, and an ESMS can help in ensuring that you can do that. There are many tools and many concepts that you can use already today, which you should start using, but ensure that you do it in a pragmatic way. Don't go wild on everything from day one. You will be drowned in work, so don't do that. So yeah, that was it. If there are any questions, please go ahead. I don't know if there are any questions. If not, no problem. All right, cool. Then thank you, and see you later.